Let's bring in Alexi McCammon, MSNBC political analyst and host of In Sync with Alexi podcast. And Dasha is back as promised as well. So, Alexi, first quick question. Any conventional wisdom out there on whether a second debate would help the Harris camp more than Trump? Or do you think both need a second debate, notwithstanding what Donald Trump has just said behind the podium, behind Dasha, where she stands, that he's not going to do another debate?
Can I ask Carolina?
I think the confidence each campaign has in their abilities to pull off a second debate is proven in who has accepted CNN's invitation to do a second debate. So far, that is only Vice President Kamala Harris. Donald Trump continues to, it seems like, rule out the idea that he would do another debate, saying he's already debated President Biden and now Kamala Harris. Something like 67 million people tuned into the first debate. So that matters. But then when you look at the polls and whether or not each candidate got a bump afterwards, they didn't really change much because of that single debate. So I think when you're thinking about the campaign getting an advantage in polls, it's not really going to matter. But of course, she could always expand on really just showing what a tough leader she would be against Trump. But people already saw that in the first debate.
So let's talk about Mark Robinson, who refuses to drop out of North Carolina's gubernatorial race amid the reports he made lewd comments on a porn site over 10 years ago and called himself a black Nazi who wanted slavery reinstated. Look, Robinson denies the reports. Usually down ballot races don't affect the presidential vote. Does it feel different in a critical state, Alexi?
Yeah, I mean, it's not only making North Carolina the single most important swing state in the presidential election, but to your point, we could see a situation in which those down ballot races for Senate, for governor, could have negative impacts on Trump. Those down ballot abortion initiatives in other states, those will also, they have the potential to have a negative impact on Trump because they are a reminder to voters of how all of these things got started with Trump setting off in motion the overturning of Roe v. Wade. So, you know, I certainly think that that won't help him either. But Mark Robinson is a liability for Trump in so many ways, even though he denies these past comments. And the Trump campaign knows it because they are not allowing him to join the rally today and don't want him near Trump himself.
Yeah, no, point well taken. Dasha, presidential historian Larry Sabato, who's famous for his election predictions, said the North Carolina governor's race has now changed from leaning Democrat to likely Democrat. Given these prospects, will Robinson feel any pressure from the Trump camp to drop out?
Well, look, we already know that folks in the Trump campaign and the former president's Republican allies have been urging Trump to rescind his endorsement of Robinson. I think that alone says a lot. I mean, he has not been a popular candidate to begin with. Some of the voters we talked to here were already saying that prior to these reports coming out, they were already not planning to vote for him. And the former president has been polling ahead of Robinson and ahead of some of the other down ballot candidates. But yeah, the question is just how much of an impact might this have? Look, folks like this at a Trump rally, it's not going to sway them, but those lean Democrat or lean Republican but might be swayable voters, it could have a potential impact. And that's certainly why you've got this scramble within the campaign and within the world of Republican operatives trying to figure out how to walk this line. It's sounding like so far from the conversations we've been having with sources that the former president is leaning towards doing sort of a disavowal of the comments that CNN reported on, but not necessarily going so far as rescinding his endorsement. But so far, what I'm hearing is all of these conversations are ongoing right now, Alex. So we'll see where this heads in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that with your help. So on Friday, the vice president delivered that powerful speech in battleground Georgia, addressing abortion and the profound effects on women and their lives after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Here's a bit of what she said.
This is a healthcare crisis, and Donald Trump is the architect of this crisis. He is proud that women are dying, proud that doctors and nurses could be thrown in prison for administering care, proud that young women today have fewer rights than their mothers and grandmothers. How dare he?
So, Alexi, the speech was a direct response to the deaths of 2 Georgia women tied to the lack of abortion care. What impact do you think this is going to have on this highly contested state?
When you add human stories and human faces to what could otherwise be abstract policies or issues that just get swept up in the partisan noise, that really sticks with people longer than a regular political ad or rally or speech might. I mean, it's horrific when we're seeing the exact thing that folks warned about before Roe was overturned, which was that women would die because they would be denied care that they needed in order to live, that is now a reality. And Donald Trump is not even in the White House. Imagine if he is reelected. And that is the argument that Democrats are making every time they tell the story of what happened, not just to these women in Georgia, but all around the country.
So, Dasha, Springfield, Ohio, still grappling with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's repeated lies about Haitian migrants eating pets. Now that it's been debunked and denied by a list of Ohio officials, including its Republican governor, is the Trump campaign trying at all to pivot away from this, or does Trump still plan to visit Springfield in the coming weeks?
It's funny you asked that. I've been listening out for exactly that, and he hasn't mentioned it at this rally so far. But they've really doubled down, even amid all of the criticism, even amid all of the response from local officials in Springfield, Ohio, talking about how much damage this is doing to the community there. This is something that is a strategy for former President Trump. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't back away. He doubles down on anything that's deemed scandalous. But this is one that's really having a tangible impact and is distracting from an issue that should be a winning issue for him. You saw Ohio Republican Governor Mike DeWine this week write an op-ed saying as much, saying to by the way, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and former President Trump, saying, look, I'm a fan of them. I like them. I want them to win. But this is not the way to go and to talk about immigration, which is an issue where you could have real success here. So that's where it's at. We'll take a listen and see if he mentions it again. But he's getting a lot of advice from people within his own party that this is not how you frame the issue of immigration successfully, Alex.
Okay. Can I just say, Dasha, I think Alexei must join me in applauding your ability to keep your thought process, keep going when you have Donald Trump and his rhetoric blaring behind you. So I thank you for that. And I thank you as well, my friend, Alexei McCammon. You guys, thank you both for joining me.